Have you ever opened something you were never meant to see, only to realize it would change the way you saw your entire family forever? Dear viewers, some discoveries are blessings, but others tear through the heart like lightning in a summer storm. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? Because tonight's story is one that will test what you believe about love, loyalty, and truth. In the quiet suburb of Maplewood, Ohio, there lived a young woman named Sarah Mitchell, 29 years old, calm-spirited, and known for her kindness, the kind of person who mailed birthday cards early and never hung up without saying, "I love you." Sarah grew up in a modest blue-painted house on Evergreen Lane. Her father, Thomas Mitchell, was a high school English teacher, a man who quoted Hemingway at breakfast and fixed every broken chair before it splintered. Her mother, Lydia, was the heart of the home, soft-spoken, church-going, the kind of woman who ironed her husband's shirts while humming old hymns. To the outside world, the Mitchells were the portrait of American stability. A perfect middle-class family, lawn mowed, porch swing creaking on warm nights, family photos lined neatly along the staircase. But dear viewers, behind every perfect picture, there's a story no camera can capture. Sarah adored her father. To her, he was everything a little girl could dream of: patient, funny, full of stories. When she scraped her knee, it was his voice that calmed her. When she brought home A's, it was his hug that made them matter. He was her hero, and for most of her life, she believed that would never change. Even as she grew up, even as the world got bigger and life got messier, Thomas was constant, until one day he wasn't. When Sarah turned 27, her father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. One ordinary morning in June. The sun was bright, the air smelled of cut grass, and yet, inside that house on Evergreen Lane, time stopped. Sarah remembered the silence afterwards, the kind that hums in your ears. Her mother collapsed into her arms. And for the first time, Sarah saw the woman she'd always thought was strong break into pieces she didn't know how to hold. The funeral was simple, just family, a few neighbors, and a choir that sang Amazing Grace. When the service ended, Sarah placed a folded note into the casket. It said, "Thank you for being my forever hero." She never thought those words would come to haunt her. 2 years later, Sarah returned home to help her mother pack up the house. Lydia had decided to move closer to her sister in Florida. To start fresh, she said. They spent days sorting old photo albums, her father's tools, his dusty vinyl collection. Then one evening, while cleaning out the attic, Sarah stumbled upon an old cedar box tucked behind a stack of Christmas decorations. It was small, secured with a brass latch, and smelled faintly of her father's cologne. Her heart skipped. She opened it, slowly. Inside were letters, dozens of them carefully folded, each sealed with her father's familiar handwriting. First, she smiled. She thought maybe they were the poems he used to write to her mother. But as she looked closer, her fingers froze. The letters weren't addressed to Lydia Mitchell. They were addressed to someone named Eleanor. The first letter began like this: "My dearest Eleanor, the nights are getting colder here without your laughter. Lydia thinks I've been grading papers late, but truthfully, I'm only thinking of you." Sarah's hands trembled. The words blurred as tears welled in her eyes. She flipped through more letters, each dated between 1998 and 2005, all during the years her parents had been married. Dear viewers, imagine standing there, in the same attic that once echoed with your childhood laughter, only to realize that the man you idolized had lived a double life. Every new letter felt like a blade. Some were written from hotels, some from school trips, some from their very own town. Each one painted a picture of a love that wasn't supposed to exist. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table, letters spread before her like ghosts. By morning, she had made a decision. She needed to know the truth, and only her mother could give it. "Mom," she began softly, her voice barely steady. "Who is Eleanor?" Her mother froze. The dish towel slipped from her hand. For a long, breathless moment, Lydia didn't speak. Then, with a trembling sigh, she whispered, "So, you finally found them." Sarah's heart sank. "You knew?" she asked, tears breaking free. "All those years you knew?" Her mother nodded weakly. "Yes, I knew, Sarah, but I loved him anyway." The room spun. Lydia explained that she had discovered the affair nearly 20 years ago. Thomas had met Eleanor at a writers' conference in Chicago. What began as mentorship slowly turned into something deeper, something forbidden. He had promised to end it, and eventually he did. But by then, the damage had already been done. Lydia had chosen silence. "Your father was a good man who made bad choices," she said. "I didn't want to destroy our family." Dear viewers, how many mothers have held their pain in silence, just to keep a home from falling apart? Sarah couldn't understand. Every memory began to unravel. Birthdays, vacations, family dinners. She questioned them all. Did her father think of Eleanor when he kissed her mother goodnight? When he held Sarah's hand on the way to school? Was part of his heart somewhere else? The betrayal wasn't just romantic. It was spiritual. It made her question love itself. For weeks, Sarah withdrew. She stopped answering calls, stopped going to work. She'd sit by the lake behind the old house, letters in her lap, wind in her hair, whispering to herself, "Who were you, Dad?" Eventually, curiosity turned into obsession. Sarah needed to know who this Eleanor was. She searched through old yearbooks, her father's emails, even newspaper archives. And then she found her, Eleanor Brooks, poet, a widow, living in a small town 2 hours away. Sarah's chest tightened. Should she reach out? Should she leave the past buried? But pain doesn't rest until it's seen. So one cold Saturday morning, she drove to the address she found online. The drive was quiet, gray clouds hanging low like unspoken words. When she arrived, an elderly woman answered the door. "Are you Eleanor Brooks?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking. The woman hesitated, then nodded. "I'm Sarah Mitchell," she said. "Thomas Mitchell's daughter." Eleanor's eyes widened. She stepped back, gripping the doorframe. "Oh, Sarah," she whispered. "I didn't think you'd ever come." The air between them thickened. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Sarah asked, "Did you love him?" Eleanor's answer came as a whisper. "Yes, I did. But I let him go long before he died." Eleanor invited her in. Her home smelled of old books and lavender. Photos lined the walls, none of them of Thomas. Eleanor told her everything. They had met when she was recently widowed. Her grief and his loneliness became comfort for each other. They wrote letters because it was the only way they could speak freely. When Lydia found out, Thomas ended it. He confessed, broke down, and begged forgiveness. And though Eleanor never saw him again, she never stopped writing, not to him but about him. She handed Sarah a final letter. It was one her father had never sent. "My dear Eleanor, I've chosen my family, but I'll carry the guilt of your tears until my last breath. If love were a sin, then I've already been punished, for I'll spend my days loving one and missing another." Sarah's tears fell silently onto the page. It wasn't just a confession. It was a man's soul laid bare. She realized then that her father wasn't a monster. He was human, flawed, torn, and painfully real. When Sarah returned home, she found her mother in the garden, tending to lilies. Without a word, she sat beside her. They stayed in silence for a long while, until Sarah whispered, "I met her." Her mother looked up, startled. "She loved him," Sarah continued, "but she let him go. And he never stopped loving you either." Lydia smiled sadly. "Love isn't always clean, sweetheart. Sometimes it's the mess we choose to forgive." Dear viewers, those words stayed with Sarah forever. Months later, Sarah turned those letters into a memoir. Not for profit, but for healing. She called it Ink Between Two Hearts. It became a tribute, not just to her father's mistakes, but to the strength of a mother who forgave, and the courage of a daughter who learned to understand. At her book's reading in a small Ohio library, a woman stood up and said, "Your story made me call my husband tonight. We haven't spoken in months." Sarah smiled through tears. That was the moment she realized. Sometimes pain, when shared, becomes light. Dear viewers, what would you have done if you were in Sarah's shoes? Would you confront the truth, or let the past rest in peace? Sometimes the letters we find aren't meant to destroy us. They're meant to show us that even those we love most can be imperfect and still worthy of love. As Sarah once said in an interview, "I stopped trying to see my father as perfect and started loving him as a human." Dear viewers, love isn't always loyal. It isn't always fair. But forgiveness is the quiet miracle that lets broken families keep breathing. If this story touched you tonight, share it with someone you care about. Maybe it will open a door that's been locked for too long. Tell me, if you found letters like Sarah did, would you read them or burn them? Let me know in the comments. And please, subscribe to Voices of Reality for more true human stories that reminds us how fragile, yet how strong, the heart can be.